What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Knockout Nest. Now, let me ask you something. What would you do if you were a rising boxing star, only to be blindsided by life and thrown into a battle way bigger than the ring? Today, we're talking about a fighter whose story goes far beyond the punches he threw. You fought your way to the top. Blood, sweat, and tears poured into every fight. Then, out of nowhere, you're hit with a knockout punch that doesn't come from the ring. What happens next? Today, we're diving into the life of Rubin "Hurricane" Carter. Now, you might have heard parts of his story before, about the trials, the wrongful conviction, and even his redemption. But today, we're taking a different look, breaking down the fighter behind the gloves and the man who fought for his freedom, not with his fists, but with his mind. We're peeling back the layers of a story you think you know, revealing what really drove Rubin, how boxing saved him, and how he turned his greatest loss into a symbol of hope. This isn't just another recount of his life. This is an exploration of the heart, the struggle, and the resilience of one of boxing's most complex figures. But before we dive into the story, be sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this. Alright, let's rewind back to 1937, Clifton, New Jersey. It's a tough world for young Rubin Carter, growing up in a family of 7 kids. Now imagine being the small, stuttering kid in a rough neighborhood. You know that's going to lead to some fights. And it did. But that's how young Rubin Carter's spirit was built. By the time he was 11, Carter was sent to a reformatory for stabbing a man he said was trying to hurt a friend. Sounds intense, right? Well, life hit Rubin hard, but this dude wasn't about to stay down. He broke out at 17 and didn't run away from his problems. Instead, he went straight into the U.S. Army. Talk about flipping the script. It was in the Army that Rubin found his calling, boxing. Can you picture it? A young Rubin Carter full of anger, finally finding the perfect outlet, punching bags instead of people. This was where Hurricane was born. What was his style? All-out aggression. His punches were like a storm, fierce and fast. When Rubin turned pro in 1961, his reputation exploded. Now at 5'8", he wasn't the biggest guy in the middleweight division, but he didn't need to be. His fist did all the talking. Picture this, the bell rings, and before you know it, Carter's right there in your face, throwing bombs. That overhand right, it's like a sledgehammer coming down. And his left hook, it'll have you seeing stars. But what really made Carter a threat in the ring wasn't just his power. It was his ability to mix aggression with smart, strategic fighting. He was a master at closing the gap, weaving past jabs and getting inside where his shorter frame became an advantage. His opponents weren't just dealing with raw power. They were up against a fighter who knew how to dismantle their defense, bit by bit. Rubin wasn't the type to wait around and let the judges decide. Nah, he was in there to knock you out, and quick. Now let's jump to December 1963, Madison Square Garden. Rubin squaring off against Emile Griffith, a former welterweight champ, and everyone's wondering how this is gonna go. First round starts, and Griffith is doing his thing, moving, jabbing, trying to keep Carter at a distance. But Rubin's got one goal: close the gap and end it fast. And then boom, Carter lands a crushing right hand. Griffith goes down and it's lights out. First round knockout. Can you imagine being in the Garden that night? People were losing their shit. That win shot Carter into the spotlight, but it didn't last as long as it should have. A year later, Carter finally gets his shot at the middleweight title against Joey Gardello. Now Rubin came out hot, dominating the early rounds. His punches were landing with authority, solid, precise shots that left Gardello looking flustered. Every time Rubin connected, it was like mini explosions, and you could see Gardello trying to hold his ground. But here's where it all went wrong. Despite Rubin controlling the pace and landing the more damaging blows, the judges handed the win to Gardello. And man, was it controversial. The crowd was stunned. Carter had done everything right, but in the end it felt like the system had robbed him, just like it would later in life. That fight was a turning point for Carter. He started seeing that sometimes, no matter how well you fight, the odds are stacked against you. Now if you think that was bad, what happens next is straight up brutal. June 17, 1966, 3 people are murdered at a bar in Paterson, New Jersey. And guess who gets accused? Rubin Carter. Just like that, life threw him a punch he never saw coming. The trial? It was a circus. No real evidence, just a whole lot of racism and shady witness testimony. Imagine being in a fight, but this time your hands are tied. Carter and his co-defendant John Artis were convicted, and Rubin was sentenced to life in prison. But here's the thing about Rubin. He didn't stay down. Inside prison, he became a student of the game, but not just boxing this time. He studied law, philosophy, religion. He sharpened his mind. You ever heard of someone turning prison into a classroom? Rubin did. And what's even crazier, he wrote his autobiography, The 16th Round, one page at a time, getting it smuggled out of prison. This wasn't just a story. It was his punchback at the system. In prison, Carter didn't just survive, he thrived intellectually. He became a mentor to other inmates, teaching them to read and understand their legal rights. He also became deeply spiritual, practicing meditation and philosophy as a way to keep his mind sharp and focused. This transformation made him more than just a boxer. He became a symbol of resilience and self-reinvention. But here's where it gets good. Enter Leslie Martin, a young Canadian who came across Carter's book. Moved by Rubin's story, Leslie and his mentors dove deep into the case. And guess what? They found the cracks. The trial was full of errors, unreliable witnesses, you name it. After nearly 2 decades in prison, Rubin was finally set free in 1985. That's 19 years of his prime gone. But Rubin, he didn't come out looking for revenge. He came out with a mission: to help others who were wronged. After he got out, Rubin moved to Toronto and co-founded the Association in Defense of the Wrongly Convicted. Even while fighting prostate cancer later in life, he kept working on freeing others who were trapped, just like he had been. That's the heart of a real champion. Not just someone who fights for themselves, but for everyone. Through this organization, Rubin worked on multiple cases, tirelessly helping to exonerate those who were wrongly imprisoned. His life after prison wasn't one of retirement. It was a second career, this time as a fighter for justice. He even mentored young lawyers, passing down his knowledge and experiences so they could carry on the fight. Now here's something boxing fans will love. Rubin wasn't just some random fighter. He was tight with legends like Muhammad Ali. Imagine these two sitting down and talking about life, not just boxing. Both men fought battles way bigger than any title fight. Rubin and Ali weren't just icons in the ring. They were symbols of a much bigger fight against injustice. Their bond was more than just two fighters respecting each other's skills. They both understood the weight of the battles they were fighting outside the ring. Ali stripped of his title for standing up against the Vietnam War, and Rubin stripped of his freedom by a broken system. Their friendship wasn't just about boxing. It was about standing tall in the face of injustice. Carter's fight for justice didn't just stay within the boxing or legal communities. It echoed throughout pop culture. In 1975, Bob Dylan, inspired by Rubin's story, wrote the song Hurricane, which became an anthem for those supporting Carter's release. The song put a spotlight on Rubin's case, bringing it into the public eye in a way that few other stories had ever been. And then, of course, there's the 1999 film The Hurricane, with Denzel Washington portraying Carter. Now, while the story dramatized parts of his life, it captured the spirit of Rubin's journey, his rise, his fall, and his ultimate redemption. These cultural touchstones kept Rubin's story alive for generations, showing how one man's fight can inspire change across the world. So when you think of Rubin Hurricane Carter, don't just remember the wrongful conviction. Think about the fighter, the man who fought battles no referee could call, and who never gave up. Even when life hit him with the hardest shot imaginable, he wasn't just a contender in the ring. His entire life was a championship bout, a fight for justice, redemption, and hope. Rubin Carter may not have walked away with the middleweight title, but his legacy was far greater than any belt he could have worn. His life was the real fight, the kind that defines what it means to be a true champion. Now I've got a question for you. What do you think makes someone a champion? Is it the titles they win, the opponents they beat, or is it the way they stand up when everything seems lost? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Because this story isn't just about Rubin Carter, it's about what we can learn from a fighter who never stayed down. This is the Knockout Nest, where we bring not just the fights, but the stories behind the fighters. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with a fellow fight fan, Thank you for watching. This is the Knockout Nest, where we bring you not just the fights, but the stories behind the fighters. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with a fellow fight fan, and hit that bell to stay updated on all the knockout stories we've got coming your way. We'll see you when the dust settles on the canvas.